my wife can be healed from this. We'll deal with whatever happens when it happens.
Beyond the rally and rhetoric of a weekend worship service lies the reality of living out the Christian faith in the everyday world. This is Monday School, a weekly conversation about faithful living in everyday terms. Here's your host, Dan DeBruler, to introduce you to this week's guest.
Sometimes I feel like we're all just one phone call, one bad diagnosis away from finding out just how deep the roots of our faith are in our life. And that's what we're going to talk about today with our friend Alan Keene. Alan, thank you so much for joining me today.
Yeah, man, it's a pleasure.
Well, we've known each other for a few years. I think I met you shortly after you began as the worship leader at Rockfish Church out in Rayford, North Carolina. Since that time, we've grown close, and I just appreciate all that you do. But there was a lot in your life that happened before you landed at Rockfish. Let's back up just a little bit and talk about your working bio, because you've been around a little bit.
Yeah, I have. I've been a worship artist. I've been a Christian artist. Did a lot of things with a lot of bands and played a lot of places. Before I came to the job here at Rockfish, I was actually jumping around from church to church. One night I'd do worship leading at one church, and Tuesday, another, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and then Sunday would be my main one. It's been a crazy journey.
Didn't you work with Dawson McAllister for a short
period?
Yeah.
For a short period, I did. I graduated college with a graphic design degree, and he hired me for a little bit to kind of revamp his look and his style, and it took me about 3 months to do the job, and it was cool. It was very cool.
What's it like working for a ministry of that magnitude?
He was a good guy to work for, and he also hired me to mentor me, and to me kind of opposite to him.
Now, ultimately, where do you call home? I mean, now you live in Rayford, North Carolina, but when you think of home, if you go back home, where is that place for you?
Colorado.
What part of Colorado?
Highlands Ranch, and also the Fairplay area right there. So we lived in Fairplay for a while. Who can complain with mountains in front of you? Nobody.
Now, because of some mutual friends, I think of home for you as Chattanooga. Is that where April, your wife, is from?
Okay. Yeah. She's from Chattanooga. Actually, interesting story. I met her, and I always smile when I have to tell this story, but I met her at a Church of God conference. Her dad works for the Church of God head department out there. And I was out there visiting, and I saw her, and I was just like, that's who I'm going to marry. And I think she thought the same thing.
That's awesome.
She probably doesn't think the same thing now, but
that leads us into talking about your family. Now, you have your wife, April, and you have two girls.
Yep, Elsie and Elin. One just turned 8 and one's 5. Elin's 5. So,
and I could tell just by the conversations we have and some of the things that I see on social media, you love being a dad.
Oh yeah, those little girls are my heart and my life. So.
My wife grew up in a family of all girls. There were no boy cousins. She had one sister. Everybody else was girls. And so, when we had our first child and it was a boy, she had no clue what to do. She didn't realize all the things boys did that girls typically don't.
Yeah, I'm sure. I'm glad we're done, so no boys for us. So.
Well, we mentioned a few moments ago, you are the worship leader for Rockfish Church, which is a multi-campus church at this point. And you've got quite a team. And I've expressed this to you personally. I appreciate the leadership model, how you have built that team to where there's not one leader. Yes, you are the guy who effectively signs the checks, but you distribute leadership among the team. And that's such a positive model, I think.
I always believe that when you walk into a worship center, you walk into a church, you should never really know who the leader is. Everybody on staff, they know that, I'm the worship director here, but I don't want people to walk in and know that when we are on stage. I want them to see several worship leaders and several leaders. I want people to see the team and not just me.
What I think you're saying is you want it to be more transparent.
Yeah.
Because no matter who is leading worship on any given day, on any given platform, in any given church, what's important is not who's bringing that message, but the message itself.
Exactly.
And I have admired your leadership model so much because it does become transparent, and it's a beautiful thing because there's no second place on a team like that, and there's no room for any personality to become more important than the message. And that's just key to leading a congregation into worship, just to be so transparent that nobody needs to care.
Nobody should care. The only thing they should be focusing on is worshiping God, and that's it. So
now, your wife recently graduated college. I don't know how long she had been in school, but I remember the excitement as she was getting her degree, and I don't know exactly what she does.
she's a counselor, but she got her degree, and now she's loving it. She's enjoying it.
So what's it like having a counselor or a
Oh my
psychologist
gosh.
in home?
Oh my gosh. Let's face it, I'll be honest. Everybody yells at their kids sometimes, and she always just like, you don't need to yell at them. You need to figure out what the problem is. And I'm like, okay, that's the counselor coming out. But yeah. So, she keeps me well grounded. Honestly, like if the last 10 years, she's really changed me from a boy to being a man.
That's right. You just celebrated the 10th anniversary, didn't you?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I saw
Yeah.
that. That's exciting, man. 10
Yeah.
years is a major landmark. So congratulations.
Yeah.
And we do change. We grow towards center in any marriage, and it's beautiful when that happens. It's even more beautiful when you look back and you realize, wow, I have changed, and I didn't change on purpose. It wasn't some checklist I set up and go through the steps. It's that we became more like each other. And there comes a point, my wife and I, we've been married for 40 years now.
Oh, man.
And
That's
so
awesome.
I think we are synonymous with one another. People know us by each other to a great extent. So your wife, getting her degree and starting out in a new career, gave you this whole big, bright, new future. And I know it had to be exciting for her.
Oh, yeah. It was exciting for her. Not only was it another paycheck, which is awesome.
Yay.
But yeah. She really loves doing it. She loves changing hearts and helping people. And that this gives her opportunity to do that. And so we're really excited about it.
So again, we're talking today with Alan Keene, who's the worship leader at Rockfish Church in Rayford, North Carolina. And we just finished talking about the bright new future as your wife April graduated from school and began working as a counselor. And I mentioned earlier, sometimes we're all just one phone call or one diagnosis away from discovering the roots of our faith and discovering what it's like to live out that faith in the real world. And you guys had something happen that was very unexpected.
Yeah, actually two things. About a month and a half ago, I got a phone call from my dad, and it turned out that my mom had passed away. We were kind of dealing with that, going through the process of the funeral and trying to understand that. Then about 2 weeks after that, my wife, I went to the hospital with her, and she was having back pain, and we found out that she had metastatic stage 4 breast cancer. I still remember that night, and it was very, very sobering.
When we walk through things like that, actually, it's not a walking through. When you walk into something like that, it can be something that will absolutely shake us, to our core, and it causes us to look. And I've seen so many different reactions to personal situations, like from believers and unbelievers alike. And I read somewhere, or someone told me, there were 5 stages to grief, and I refuse to look them up. I don't need somebody telling me what stage I'm at. I feel like after this amount of time walking closely with Christ, I should know Him well enough that God and I can work through these things together, and I can rely on what I know to be true from the Word. And watching you and watching the things that you've walked through and hearing the things that you've said and how you've shared and how you have abstained from sharing in some cases, I realize that you have to walk through this personally and with God.
Yeah. It's as tough, and I'm still dealing with stuff, still dealing with anxiety and worrying about, what would happen with me and, stuff like that. But one thing that I've realized is that God, first off, He's a good God. I believe that He has my wife in His hands. He has me and my family in His hands, and He can take care of things. And He can really do some miracles and do some work, whatever that might look like. And I firmly believe that. Yeah.
So again, you're in a fairly good-sized church, a big team, people that I'm sure that you call a close friend, people you call friend, and many, many, many more who you know as acquaintances, many of whom are walking closely with the Lord. Do you feel like when you're going through circumstances like this, when you're the guy, you're standing in front of the room, it doesn't matter whether or not you want people to know who you are, they know who you are, and to an extent, they know your business too. Do you feel like that makes it more difficult, or do you feel like it makes it easier having those people to count on, or do you feel like it makes no difference at all because you still have to walk through it alone anyway?
You don't have to walk through it alone. We've got a lot of people here at the church that have helped us, that set up stuff like meal trains and that are praying for not only April but me and my girls and my mother-in-law who's staying with us right now. The thing that really opened my eyes about this is that we have touched a lot of people and a lot of lives I don't even know about. People that have messaged me on Facebook saying, "Hey, we're praying for you," and I don't know them, but they've met somebody who knows me or inadvertently, and some of the things that they've told us, how we've changed their lives and helped them out in situations, and it's a positive thing in a negative area, if that makes sense. Like I said, I know that my King and my Savior has got me, has got my fears, my anxieties, got April's fears and anxieties, and he's taking them, and he's gonna use us for his glory, for his honor.
I believe people are always watching us, whether we realize it or whether we don't. Just like you said, you have met so many people or heard from so many people as you've walked through this situation. And that is so indicative of how our lives as Christians really are, that people are watching. And I feel like there is this expectation that it almost has its own weight to it. There are some who are looking at us, waiting for us to fall apart. And there are others who are looking at us wondering, in a situation like this, well, they should be over this now. That's been 6 weeks, and they should be okay with it. They say they know Jesus. And there's others who genuinely are praying for you and being a friend and just letting you talk and letting you work through this with God and with yourself and with each other.
I was about to say, I think the important thing is to realize that ministers they're people. They go through things. People set them up on this pedestal. It's all well and good, but they don't want to be there. I don't want to be there. I go through things. I'm going through something right now, and I think it's good to understand that even in those times, we do question things as ministers. I've questioned stuff. Why is this happening? Why now? Why do this to us? And I think it's healthy to question stuff like that. But I think it's also healthy to find the answer within the Lord and His Word, and that's the only way.
Because of what I do for a living, I'm on Christian radio. When I'm walking through something that is especially difficult, I tend not to talk about it. And this is until recently. I tend not to talk about it at all because I don't want people to think that I put myself on some sort of pedestal, that 10,000 people might be listening on any given day and they're walking through the most awful circumstances that they have ever walked through in their life. But when it happens to me, now I'm going to stop and talk about it because now it's important because it's me. So there's this thing that's built into me that makes me clam up a little bit. I don't share. And I witnessed something you did recently from the platform, and you were as intentionally vague as I see myself being when I do these things, because I'll say a bad thing. And I heard you, it was during a worship service, and you were introducing a song, and you said, I don't know what it's like for you when you're walking through a tough time, but I walked through a tough time recently, and this song really ministered to me. Yeah. And I thought, anybody who doesn't know what he's talking about, is saying, okay. But those people who were close realize, that there is help. And for people like you and me, I know that we lean into music. I definitely connect to God through music, through lyrics of songs, and through singing. You know, I walked through a tough situation recently, and I had a friend come to me, and they know that the music is important to me, and they said, Dan, you need to sing. You need to sing whenever you can. You need to sing to God. Don't let this take your song. You know, I was impressed the way you handled it that day, but at the same time, I was like, man, he's just as vague as I am.
Yeah. I mean, you kind of want to protect what you're going through, you know? I mean, I know a lot of things, and I've talked to my wife about this. I know a lot of people, they don't know what to say in certain situations, especially when it's dealing with grief, or if it's dealing with going through something extremely hard. People don't know what to say, so they'll ask you, you know, hey, how are you doing? You know, well, you don't want to be like, you know, rude and say, well, you know, this is how I'm doing. You know, what do you think? You know, and they mean well. You got to remember that. But at the same time, when people are going through stuff, I mean, the last thing they want to hear is how are you doing? Sometimes, you know, especially ministers. And I think a lot of people forget that, like I said, they're people too. They need to be ministered to. They spend their whole lives ministering to others and helping them out and praying with them and being with them. But ministers are people who have feelings and go through sometimes dark, heavy stuff in their lives. And I know sometimes, and I've some ministers have expressed this to me, that they feel alone because, you know, they've ministered to all these people and they don't know how to get ministered to. Luckily, my church family has been great, and they're all expressed they're praying for me. And we had somebody come over and give us like a ton of groceries. I don't know how I fit it in my refrigerator and in my pantry, but there's other ways to let ministers know that you love them and that you're praying for them. So,
one important thing to realize here is this was your wife, is your wife that's facing this. And we've got to remember that with every diagnosis, there is a family, there is a close family member, there is a future at stake. And I can't imagine personally walking through the uncertainty that you are right now. You know, just as a friend, the weight of that on a friend almost crushes me, knowing I don't know how to pray for you other than, God, speak to Alan. You know, I just want God to touch you in a way today that he didn't yesterday, and for you to relate to him tomorrow like you couldn't even today.
It's a tough thing not knowing your future, knowing that someday, well, I don't even like talking about it, you know, but knowing someday that, you know, you're going to be with 2 kids, you know, by yourself. But you know what? And I'm always trying to, even though it's in the back of my mind, God is a good God. He's a gracious God. He's a healing God. And I believe that my wife can be healed from this. You know, we'll deal with whatever happens when it happens.
And, you know, there's power in that testimony of faith right there. The testimony that you know that April can be healed. At the same time, you know you could also be a single father of 2 girls at any given moment. I mean, really, when it gets right down to it. And I think it's important for us to recognize the fact that stories like yours, they're all around us. You know, we are surrounded broken people and people who just lost somebody, some people who just got a diagnosis today or yesterday, and people who are walking through the same uncertainty. And that's where the power of our testimony becomes real. You know, when we are able to share with others from whatever platform we have, and it might be the platform of riding up an elevator together with somebody, or it might be the platform of sitting next to somebody on the bus or in a doctor's office and just turning and offering a kind word and beginning a relationship in that single moment right there, or offering a smile or a tiny bit of testimony that will lead you to a place where you can offer them the same hope that you've got.
Yeah.
And it is powerful. I've seen so many instances circling around my life where I realize if I had said something, or if I do say something, or if I don't say something, that it could completely affect the outcome, because you and I, we know the truth. We know God. We know that God can heal. We know that God can have us 100% prepared if we do end up in all the what ifs that we've been running through our mind.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, you never know what's going to happen, but the thing that makes us different is that we have God in our lives, and we have a Jesus and a Savior that we love with all our heart, and we know that He will take care of things. Everything from anxiety to depression to stress to family outcomes to God has it.
God does have it. That's a great way to wrap things up. Again, we're talking today with Alan Keene, a worship leader at Rockfish Church in Rayford, North Carolina. Thank you so much for taking time to sit down and just offer a testimony of faith.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you for having me on this. I mean, it was really good talking about this. And if it's okay, I'd like to share a song that's been speaking to my heart lately, if that's okay.
That'd be great.
The storm inside brings me to my knees. Where to hide? This weight is crippling. Come speak to the sea. It's raging inside of me. All this worry, to you I will release. I cast my cares at your feet. Take it all, take it all. I trade my fear for your peace. Take it all, take it all. Give me your peace. Pull me up when I feel beneath. Clear the skies. You are my soul's relief. Come speak to the sea that's raging inside of me. All this worry, to you I will release. I cast my cares at your feet. Take it all, take it all. I trade my fear for your peace. Take it all, take it all. Give me your peace. Let your peace fall down from your hand to my heart. Let your peace fall down, 'cause it's who you are. Let your peace fall down from your hand to my heart. Let your peace fall down, 'cause it's who you are. Let your peace fall down from your hand to my heart. Let your peace fall down, 'cause it's who you are. Let your peace fall down from your hand to my heart. Let your peace fall down, because it's who you are. I cast my cares at your feet. Take it all, take it all. I'll trade my fear for your peace. Take it all, take it all. Give me your peace.
Thanks for joining us. Monday School is a weekly conversation about faithful living in everyday terms. Feel free to share this with your friends and family. No matter where you heard this today, you can find the latest and past episodes wherever you listen to podcasts. Join us again next time as we journey beyond the rally and rhetoric of a weekend worship service and into the reality of living out the Christian faith in the everyday world. Monday School, real life, real faith, real people.